My name is Kristen Dunfield, and I'm an assistant professor of psychology at Concordia University and a member of the Center for Research in Human Development. I am a confusing person to start a series of talks on health. In many ways, I am your stereotypical professor. I am fueled almost entirely by coffee. I've had more postal codes than I've had physicals. If it weren't for my dog, I would regularly forget to leave the house for days on end. And worst of all, I spend all my time grappling with decades-old philosophical questions. The question that has most consistently held my attention relates to identifying the unique parts of human psychology that have allowed us to so thoroughly dominate this planet. More specifically, I examine the development of trust over the lifespan by looking at how human infants and toddlers help, share, comfort, and cooperate with the people around them. I do this because I think it is in these other-oriented behaviors, or the better angels of our nature, where I think the answer to this question lies. In my remaining minutes, I want to make a case for why we should all care about the question of human uniqueness. To do this, I would like to ask you to close your eyes for a second. Imagine receiving a certified letter. The return address is a local hospital. Inside, the letter states, a radiologist has found an abnormality on your MRI. There are a number of possible causes, none of which are particularly good if your goal is a long and healthy life. You need to go immediately for follow-up tests. What do you do with this information? What, if anything, would you change? Where would you want to be? Now open your eyes. I don't have to imagine how I would answer those questions. I received that letter 4 years ago while I was a postdoctoral fellow at The Ohio State University. And my first thought was, I can't do this alone. 3 weeks later, when I walked into the doctor's office to get the results of my scans, I was resolute. If my life was going to be considerably shorter than I had planned, I was going to quit the job that I loved so that I could move back home and spend my remaining healthy years with the people that I loved. Luckily, it didn't come to that, and I'm fine. Though that letter didn't change my life in the way I originally thought it would, it did have a profound and lasting impact on how I think about my social world. Looking back on my reaction, it borders on cliché, but it was cliché for a good reason. Human beings are wired to connect. Homo sapiens are what academic types like to call an ultra-social species. We not only live in large social groups, we depend on these social groups for our survival and well-being. From birth and throughout our life, we are critically and inextricably linked with the people in our environment. In the 1940s, psychologist Abraham Maslow proposed a hierarchy of needs. At the bottom of the hierarchy, he placed the things we typically think of as necessary for survival, like food, water, sleep, and shelter. These physiological needs, or capital N needs, form the base of his pyramid. As we move up the pyramid away from these capital N needs, we find the small n needs, things that are nice to have but not critical for survival, like that whipped cream on your mocha. It's nice if you can get it, but not nearly as important as that first black cup of joe. So Maslow put our social needs, like love, a sense of belonging, and a sense of esteem, 2 rungs up from those physiological needs, squarely in the small n category. Recently, it's become increasingly clear that Maslow may require some restructuring. It's high time we start taking more seriously the critical role that social connectedness plays in our health and well-being. The clearest case for why we need to reconsider how we value our social connections can be made if we start at the beginning. Human infants are absolutely terrible at survival. Well, infants of some primate species can assist in their own birth, and many can actively engage with their environment within moments of delivery. Human infants cannot. Human infants are born incredibly immature, and it takes them months before they can intentionally and effectively execute a grasp, let alone meet their basic physiological needs. Just yesterday, I watched my 2-year-old niece get herself so thoroughly stuck in the chair she uses daily that my sister needed to swoop in and save her. This means that the single most important factor predicting the survival of a human infant is a committed caregiver. For the developing human, social connectedness is not a small n need, it is the biggest big N need. Though this drive to connect emerges in infancy, it can be observed throughout the lifespan, most convincingly in the brain. When human beings, young and old, aren't actively engaged in solving decades-old philosophical quandaries or calculus problems, there is one thing our brains like to do, and that's think about other people. The default network is a network of neurons that's most active when the brain isn't doing anything else. It's long puzzled psychologists, but clever studies in the field of social neuroscience have found that the default network is largely identical to the network of neurons that activates when we engage in social cognition. That is, when we're thinking about other people and ourselves. This suggests that connecting with others has been a critically important behavior for humans for quite a while. Relatedly, though we often use physical metaphors to describe the pain of social rejection, he was broken-hearted, the metaphor may not be all that figurative at all. Social rejection appears to activate the same areas in the brain as real physical pain, suggesting that sticks, stones, and names all do actually hurt me. Finally, to take us back to where we started, it appears as though connecting with others tastes like coffee. Playing fair, donating to charity, or simply being there to support another all activate the pleasure centers in our brain. When my very first research supervisor agreed to come to this lecture as a home court advantage, he may not have realized that his kind act did as much for him as it's currently doing for me. Together, what these findings suggest is that being connected with the people in our environment has been so profoundly important that we go through life with a brain that defaults to thinking about others, feels genuine pain in the face of social rejection, and is actively rewarded by reaching out and making contact. So what does this all mean for human uniqueness? Well, I think it means we need to spend more time attending to and fostering our social connections. Humans are successful as a species because we can depend on one another. Having weak social connections is literally as bad for your health as smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day. But having a single friend you see most days of the week is as good for your well-being as earning an extra $100,000 a year. So as you leave here today, take a minute to appreciate your social world, because being connected to others is the easiest and most pleasurable way to increase your quality of life and well-being. Or as Albert Einstein so aptly put it, only a life lived for others is a life worthwhile. Thank you.